Welcome to the Streets and People podcast presented by Get Around Cabo Car Free. Get Around Cabo Car Free is a volunteer community movement advocating for more transport options for people who can't drive in Caboolture and Morayfield in Queensland. In today's podcast, we'll be covering one of these three broad topics. It might be Road Rules 360, where we discuss Queensland's road rules, the legislation, the design for people walking, biking, in wheelchairs or on a scooter. It might be Not Everyone Drives, where we chat with people whose transport options don't include a car in a car-dependent society. And it might be People and Projects, where our conversations are with people working on a specific aspect of inclusive transportation. Today we're doing one of our Road Rules 360 episodes. I'm here with John Burrill. John, yes. You worked at the TMR.
Nice to be here. I did, yes.
We are here to entertain and inform, no legal advice.
Just having fun.
Yes, exactly. Well, we hope so. You've retired. You're no longer with the TMR, but you were in there for 20 years. Yes. We've done our little legal caveat. You were just telling me about how the legislation for PMDs, personal mobility devices, came through.
Yes.
It was during the era of a previous Premier of Queensland, and not long after they had arrived, somebody wrote a letter saying, I had a business idea for something or other.
And we basically got the instruction, facilitate this, do it, despite the advice that we provided that it wasn't a very good idea, which wasn't, because those Segway things were illegal at the time. Thousands and thousands of hours went into producing a set of legislation, a set of rules specifically for Segway devices. But then you see in the years that followed, all the other people that produced all these other kind of electronic devices, riding machines, fanciful things, they complained bitterly and said, well, how come you've provided rules just for Segways? We want to be included in this legislation as well. So again, many more hours later, we currently have in the legislation catering for personal mobility devices.
See, that's very interesting, because I didn't know that about PMDs. I just knew that Queensland was ahead of the game. That Premier,
so, yeah.
We won't be naming names.
I'd love to name names.
We won't be naming names. Had a very forthright character. It goes to show that if your timing is right, you get the right person in the right place in the right circumstance, that's when things change. Here we are a decade later, whatever it is.
15 years.
So that gives you a bit of an indication of who we are talking about.
Oops.
Queensland was a leader in the pack in Australia in terms of legislation. Now that we are here, how do you feel about that instruction, those hours and that work at the TMR? Because that was during your time when you were there.
We figured it was a step in the right direction. We weren't opposed to it, but I think the bureaucracy is huge and moves very slowly, and when we saw it we realised how difficult it was going to be, because it was going to be hugely difficult and the massive amounts of changes need to be made in order to facilitate this.
But it does take somebody with a very strong personality, not somebody you necessarily like or voted for or want to have on your team. But it's interesting because this is how the beginning of the legislation changed, because here are we all being sweet as pie and we would like, and it would be lovely if one day you could consider this in all our letters.
It was all to do with the business opportunities. That's the way it was envisaged at that point. Here's a businessman, he wants to make some money, let him. That was the essence, the instruction. There was a lot more that transpired after that as to how we go about making those changes. It happened. And
now we've got the situation where PMDs and bicycles and pedestrians and wheelchairs, mobility scooters, the four-wheel ones, all of that has different legislation. And gee, wouldn't it be great if that was all harmonised?
Yes.
Now, we did write to the TMR and said, let's help with the harmonisation of the road rules for all active transport users. And they said this goes up to the Australian road rules model legislation, which is, of course, what we knew would happen. But we had to put it in.
Say that.
We knew they'd say that.
We really have to call TMR out on this, because that is nonsense. The whole reason we are ahead in our legislation with regard to this kind of device is because we didn't go to the National Forum for getting consensus before we move. If we'd done that, we would still be deliberating, because that adds between 5 and 7 years to the legislative process if you're going to go through the whole national thing. And what generally happens is one jurisdiction jurisdiction or another will just launch something and do something and then try and drag everybody else in behind it. That happens all the time, and that is what's happening with PMDs at this minute. I can guarantee to you Queensland is trying to push its position to other jurisdictions to fall in line with it. I don't know whether it'll be successful or not.
You're on an e-scooter.
Yeah.
You haven't hired it. You own it.
Yes.
And I've had one for 5 weeks because my bicycle got stolen, so I've been on a scooter. That's been actually really good. I hadn't ever ridden one before, and it was very interesting for me. So my friends at Scootmasters lent me one, which was fantastic. They road test them and all the rest. They give their reviews, so the scooter companies are happy for them to trial it. They arranged for me to borrow one for the duration because I'm also promoting active transport and promoting scooters and e-bikes. But I had never ridden one. What was very interesting for me was that it was much less stable, so I didn't appreciate that. But gee, I loved how nippy they were. They were fantastic. You could definitely see how bumpy the footpaths were, how badly designed they were. You really notice it on a scooter. And I think
wheels.
Yeah, and I think for council workers who are designing and doing the maintenance on the footpaths, I think it would be really worth council workers going around on scooter to become aware of how bumpy they are, because gee, it's really tricky and unpleasant from that regard. But I did get used to it, and I loved it. And then I had to collect my new bicycle, so my husband borrowed it and just rode it home after work because I left it where he works. And he was going, oh, I don't know about this, and then he tried it and he's like, oh, this is so much fun. So we had a fully legal one, a helmet, high vis, all the rest. I would absolutely recommend that you do that on a PMD because you are on the footpath. You've got those big fences. People have driveways. They suddenly come out. They're not seeing you. You would absolutely, because I was always in high vis with a high vis vest and a high vis helmet, and I'm high, people really saw me, and there's no doubt that just kept me that little bit safer for sure.
Whereas on an e-scooter, you would probably be lower than you were on your bicycle, so it would be a disadvantage.
This was on the scoot. Of course, you have to be on the footpath, but we'll go into that. Today we're doing PMDs, and I am reading from www.qld.gov.au/transport/safety/rules/personal-mobility-devices.
Wow.
Somebody's going to type that down as we go. I just went TMR PMD. We're going down to the section that says personal mobility devices, and there's quite a lot of technical information here, more than I think there is for any other.
What it does is outlines, if you like, the definition of what PMD is.
Okay, and it goes what is legal, what is not legal. All right. Personal mobility devices can include e-scooters, e-skateboards, self-balancing single-wheel devices like e-unicycles and e-boards. In Queensland, a personal mobility device must be designed for use by one person only, fit the following dimensions: 1 metre and 25 centimetres long by 70 centimetres wide by 1 metre and 35 centimetres high, or 70 centimetres long by 1 metre 25 centimetres wide by 1 metre 35 centimetres high.
That's to accommodate things that are wider than they are longer, like Segways. I mean, the original Segway was a wide thing, but it wasn't very long.
A maximum weight of 60 kilos when not carrying a person or load. So be powered by an electric motor, have one or more wheels. The following are not personal mobility devices: vehicles with pedals, motorised mobility devices such as mobility scooters or motorised wheelchairs, wheeled recreational devices such as skateboards, roller skates and foot scooters.
The thing to pull out there is, because the rule is so exact, the moment you step outside, and I'm sure that a lot of people wouldn't have a clue, but if you've got a device that weighs 65 kilograms, or if you've got something that may be 10 millimetres higher or longer than those dimensions, then suddenly what you become is illegal. Simple as that. Illegal vehicle.
So you've got the battery, which is a few kilos. You've got baskets or whatever. Say you've got something that helps you carry whatever. Yeah. All right, you've got your scooter. I'm going to say an e-scooter because that's what I've been using for the last little while. That's 1.25 long. Now, if I put something on the front, a little basket or something, is the beginning of the length of it at the beginning of the basket, or or the beginning of the wheels?
There is nothing in the rules that I'm aware of that differentiates between either or. So I would say that if you increase the length and that part that you've added is a permanent fixture, then that's a new length and may well take you outside of the definition. In other words, you become illegal. It seems strange and crazy, but that's the way the rules work often.
So if I had a removable basket at the front of my scoot,
then that might be the difference. Can you imagine a police officer there with his tape measure, wondering, let's see, how long is your device? I can't see it happening. When you look at the actual technicalities and the way the law is shaped, this is what you have to look at. Often the more exacting they are and the more parameters they put into the definitions and the rules, the harder it is to comply.
When you ride a personal mobility device, you must always keep left and give way to pedestrians, travel at the right speed for where you are, travel at a safe distance from a pedestrian so you can avoid a collision, keep left of oncoming bicycles and other personal mobility devices, and also wheelchairs and the rest. Although I think wheelchairs, they get classified as a pedestrian.
Yes.
A mobility scooter, that's a pedestrian.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything you want to pull out of that?
When it comes to what are not personal mobility devices, we're looking at basically bicycles and e-bikes and those other devices. Wheeled recreational devices includes foot scooter with a tiny engine, 200 watt motor.
Yeah.
So it begs the question, when does a powered wheeled recreational device suddenly become a PMD? I wouldn't want to even try and answer that question because it's a blurred line.
Paths. You may ride on paths unless there is a sign prohibiting personal mobility devices. You must comply with the following speed limits. On footpaths, 12 kilometres an hour maximum. It's very hard to do that, I must say, on a scoot, because the one that I've just had, the minimum gear was number 1, and that was 15 kilometres an hour.
Seriously? Wow.
Second gear was 20 kilometres an hour, and third gear was 25 kilometres an hour.
Right.
I thought it did comply, but it turns out it didn't, basically because when I'm on footpaths, I couldn't go down to 12 kilometres an hour easily.
Well, you would have some sort of a throttle control there to regulate it. So you'd be able to regulate it at 12 kilometre an hour.
You're on the footpath, it's bumpy, it's curved, you've got cambers, you've got gutters you're navigating, you're dealing with other people, and you're going, I can't go that 3 kilometres an hour difference. It's just ludicrous.
Yep.
Nuts.
I hear you.
So shared paths, 12 kilometres an hour. Separated paths. So I did footpaths 12 kilometres an hour maximum, shared paths 12 kilometres an hour maximum unless signed otherwise.
Yeah. Something to pull out there, you will often see the shared path sign, but in reality, in Queensland, there is no difference between a footpath or a shared path. These devices are allowed on footpaths in the same way they're allowed on shared paths. Different in other states and territories, though.
It was footpaths 12 kilometres an hour, shared paths 12 kilometres an hour unless signed otherwise, separated paths 25 kilometres an hour maximum unless signed otherwise, bicycle paths 25 kilometres an hour maximum unless signed otherwise. No bicycle path is going to say no e-scooter allowed. Can't imagine that. Separated paths, I'm not going to say anything. The shared path, unless otherwise signed, must be pedestrians only.
What that means is you might have a bicycle path with a speed limit sign that says 15 kilometres an hour, so a lower speed limit sign, in which case that's what the limit would be.
All right.
But that would be for bicycles and these devices as well.
All right. And then the website has got images of people walking in different types of paths. I suggest you go to the URL, just type in Tiamat, PMD, roads. You may ride on the road in some locations as outlined in the following table. You must comply with the relevant speed limits. On the left-hand side, it says allowed road use location, and on the right side is the speed limits for personal mobility devices. So on the allowed road use locations, bike lanes on roads with speed limits of 50 kilometres an hour or less. Here's the speed limit, 25 kilometres an hour maximum, and obey speed limits lower than 25 kilometres an hour. So the allowed road use location is any bike that is physically separated from other lanes of traffic, for example by bollards or raised median strip, and the speed limit again, it's the same, 25 an hour, and obey speed limits lower than 25. Local streets, it's 50 kilometres an hour or less, and no dividing line. And again, it's exactly the same, 25 kilometres an hour maximum. I don't know why they put it in a table.
this is overkill. First two categories are exactly the same as well. Bike lanes, whether it's a separated bike lane or whether it's just a normal bike lane on a road.
Yeah.
Bike lane is a bike lane. If it's classed as a bike lane, that's the speed limit.
Yeah, okay. Poorly written. All right. Prohibited areas. You must not ride past a personal mobility device prohibited sign. Your local council or landowners may prohibit personal mobility devices in areas like malls, esplanades, or jetties. You can contact your local council to find out if there are any laws that apply to the use of PMDs. Then there's rules for riders where you can ride and speed limits. It's a little video, 1.5 minutes. Helmets. When you ride a personal mobility device, you must wear an approved bicycle helmet or an approved motorbike helmet. You must securely fit and fasten it. An approved bicycle helmet means a helmet that complies. Look out for a sticker on the helmet that certifies its compliance. You do not need to wear a helmet if you have a doctor's certificate stating that for a specific amount of time you cannot wear a helmet for medical reasons or because of physical characteristics that make it unreasonable for you to wear one. What would that be?
I know people, their head is large and they have tried on numerous occasions to get a bicycle helmet to fit them and they just can't find one. We've given them an exemption.
If you have a doctor's certificate, you must carry it with you when you ride without a helmet. You also do not need to wear a helmet if you are a member of a religious group and are wearing a headdress customarily worn by your group that makes it impractical to wear a helmet. Basically, if you're Sikh. There's another 1-minute video about safety gear, and then riding and mobile phones. To keep yourself and other road users safe, your full attention is needed when riding a PMD. Holding a mobile phone in your hand or resting it on any part of your body when riding is illegal. The phone does not need to be turned on for it to be an offence. You can keep your phone in your pocket or your clothing or in a pouch you are wearing, but you must not be able to see the screen. Oh, there you go. Mounting your phone to the handlebars is allowed so that it can be used for GPS navigation or as a speedometer. You can use a mobile phone in your hand when stationary on paths or on nature strips. And there's a 38-second video.
It's fascinating. You must not be able to see the screen. That is amazing. Well, how can you use it as a GPS if the screen isn't visible? It's even got a picture there of the screen being visible on the e-scooter.
It says mounting your phone on the handlebars is allowed so that it can be used for GPS navigation or as a speedometer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's saying if it's properly mounted, then you can do it. But if you just have it in your hand or resting it,
that's when it becomes an offence. But reading that's very poorly worded.
One of the things that I've been learning in the time that I've been doing Get Around Caboolture is that all these road rules came about because of cars.
Primarily, yes.
I mean, road rules didn't exist before cars.
Ever since the advent of the motor vehicle, there's been a need for rules, basically stop people from killing other people.
Motor murder, as the Dutch called it. Then we've got equipment. Every time you ride, your personal mobility device must have an effective stopping system controlled by using brakes, gears or motor control, working bell, horn or similar warning device if the device has handlebars. Your PMD must not have sharp protrusions, so no razor blades sticking out.
I'll remember that one.
If you ride at night or in weather conditions that make it difficult to see, you must display either on the PMD or on you a white light flashing or steady that can be clearly seen at least 200 meters from the front of your PMD, a red light flashing or steady that can be clearly seen at least 200 meters from the back of the PMD, a red reflector that can be clearly seen at least 50 meters from behind the PMD when a vehicle's headlights shine on it. And we've got here rules for riders, age limits and doubling, and the duration is 50 seconds. It's all good information. Basically, there are different rules for whether you can ride at what age. Crashes. A crash can happen with a driver of a vehicle, including car, bicycle or PMD, or a pedestrian on a road or road-related area. Road-related areas can be footpaths, bicycle paths, shared paths, car parks, other public areas where bikes can be ridden. If you have a crash, you must stop, remain at the scene, and give assistance to anyone who is injured. This can include calling an ambulance. Exchange personal information, including name and address, with other people involved in the crash. If you or anyone else involved in the crash fail to exchange personal information, you must report the incident to the police through the Police Link website or call 13 14 44. In an emergency, call 000. If you're on a hire scooter, all that applies presumably. But if you're a tourist, you come in from overseas, you're hiring it, is that on the scooter?
I would say there would be some kind of loan document, probably not even that with a lot of these scooters. There would be some kind of waiver that you would have signed or agreed to prior to taking up the hire, and it would probably have all this stuff or links to it at least in the small print.
Okay.
So they probably cover themselves in that. But
for sure.
in reality, somebody coming in from overseas and just hiring one of those things wouldn't have a clue.
And may not have good grasp of English anyway. Other rules. Carrying people. A personal mobility device is designed for use by one person only. You must not carry another person when riding in PMD, not even a child. I see that a lot. And I feel bad because I saw a mum and her daughter. They were on one together.
Yep.
Clearly they were a low-income house. There was the son, also a high school student,
Yep.
maybe year 7 or something. The daughter was maybe year 9. And it just looked like it was fine. I couldn't really understand why it would be such a problem.
I know. Once again, it's probably a bit of overkill, and it's often down to the weight. I mean, you might get one very large male who weighs maybe 150 kilograms, and then you might have a mum and a child that weigh actually less than 100 kilograms between them. So it's not necessarily a weight thing. It seems, once again, just overkill, just rules for the sake of it.
It reminds me of bicycles where you're not allowed to have somebody on the back of the bike or whatever.
Or sitting on the crossbar.
Exactly.
And stuff, yeah.
And people have been doing that forever. And if you have good infrastructure, there's actually no problem with any of that.
If the vehicle is sort of set up, I know, funny, remember my kids when they had the BMX bikes and they had these stunt pegs at the back, and they were basically pegs that you could just sort of jump on as opposed to the pedals that use them. But oftentimes there would be somebody else standing on those pegs, on the stunt pegs.
Are you saying the road rules expert?
Oh, this was a long time ago.
Were you the road rules expert when your kids...
My kids are all men now, I confess.
So, riding with a person in a PMD trailer. You can tow a child in or on a PMD trailer if you are 16 years or older, the child is under 10 years old and is wearing an approved helmet that is securely fitted and fastened. The PMD trailer can safely carry the child. Carrying a load, you can carry a load on your PMD. If you choose to carry a load, you must attach the load to your PMD in a way that does not make the device unstable. Make sure the load is unlikely to fall from the PMD.
Yeah. I mean, all of these rules here are basically a mirror of the bicycle rules. The same about riding with a person in a trailer, you'll find it's word for word what it says for bicycles.
Yeah. Towing, you must not ride a PMD that is being towed by another vehicle. We've done this in the bikes. You can't be on the back of a car and then doing that. Yeah. Hold on to a moving vehicle while riding a PMD. There you go. Lead an animal while riding a PMD. And I see lots of people on bikes and on scoots doing that, but it's not actually allowed. And the reason for that is that animals, unlike humans, may be more likely to be unpredictable. So there's a cute looking puppy dog on heat over there.
Yeah, your male dog is likely to do what
go
male dogs would always do.
Signal when you change direction. If your PMD has indicator lights, you must use them to show direction when you turn right or left. If your device does not have indicator lights, then when you turn right, and again, it's not turning left because of course...
There's no such thing as a left turn hand signal.
Which is completely crazy, and the reason for that is because that's car signals being transferred into bicycle signals being transferred into PMD signals. Nuts.
I know.
And we have got to tell the TMR going, this is nuts. We've got to get something done about those road rules. All right. If your device does not have indicator lights, then when you turn right, use your right hand to signal. If you feel safe to remove it from the handlebars. To do this, extend your right arm out horizontally and at right angle from the right side of your personal mobility device. Your hand should be open with your palm facing forward. Is that like a 90 degree? But you're saying straight out. Okay. At a T intersection, you may move to the far left of the road or path and stop to check that the path is clear before you proceed. At a cross intersection, you may perform a hook turn. And a hook turn
is basically where you go straight into the intersection and wait in the opposite corner. So if you're approaching close to the left boundary, you've got a crossroads. You go across to the left opposite corner, wait there until coast is clear or the way is clear for you to make the second part of your turn, which is a right turn, then cross the path of oncoming vehicles. So it's just splitting the right turn into two separate turns or two separate movements, one forward into the intersection and another one across the intersection.
Well, you've just described it, but here it is. You can turn right at an intersection using a hook turn. How you do this depends on if there are traffic lights at the intersection. If the intersection has no traffic lights, you should keep to the far left of the road and move towards the intersection. Pause and give way to motorists moving through the intersection. When the road is clear, move forward across the road. If the intersection has traffic lights, you should move forward through the intersection from the bicycle lane on a green light. I love this. From a bicycle lane. The last time you saw an intersection with a bicycle lane on the left-hand side and you should be turning right. Good luck staying alive at that one. It's nuts.
It's an option to turn right from that left position if you're on a bicycle or a PMD. And this is where a lot of this really becomes strange and muddled, because in reality, if there's a centre line, you're not even supposed to be there, right? And we're talking here about intersections where you've got traffic lights. If you've got traffic lights there's always going to be lines in the road, and so you're not supposed to be there anyway. It's really weird. It's rules for the sake of it. It's just taking a blanket. This is what the rules are for bicycles, so we'll just superimpose all of this and make it the same rules for PMDs, even though they don't and will never apply to PMDs.
Certainly not in the current format of the Queensland road rules. All right. You can see how bad the text is, because it goes, if the intersection has traffic lights, you should stop in the bicycle hook turn storage box. Yes, I'm sitting in here in a storage box.
Not many of them around. Some have seen them. Oh boy.
Storage boxes, ludicrous language. Or in a safe area in the opposite corner and turn your personal mobility device to the right in the direction of the marked arrow. If there is no line marking for hook turns, you should stop where you are clear of traffic. You will now be facing a red light. When the light turns green, move forward through the intersection. Some intersections will have line markings for you to use for hook turns. Have you ever seen one of those, John?
I have, but I can tell you now, they're probably as rare as hen's teeth. Even rarer really is, when you start looking at some of this, you just have to smile and just shake your head. What are these guys thinking about here? It's way overkill.
You know, it reminds me, have you ever read the book Catch-22?
I think I tried to when I was a youngster and didn't get very far, but yes.
I read it as a youngster. And the whole thing is talking about the ludicrousness of having these rules and regulations that make no sense at all and contradict each other all the time. And what this reminds me of is exactly the same as Catch-22.
Yes, that's right.
It's nuts. All right, keeping left and overtaking. When you ride, you must ride as close as possible to the left side or on the road shoulder on a single lane road. Ride to the left of any oncoming vehicle. Not overtake another vehicle on the left if that vehicle is indicating and turning left. Not overtake another vehicle on the left if it is not safe. Well, you'd be dead. Not ride with more than 2 riders side by side unless you are overtaking another rider. Ride no more than 1.2 metres apart if travelling beside another rider. Anything to add in that?
Again, a complete, absolute mirror of the rules for cycling. But you see, bicycle rider can ride on literally any road except a motorway. So even if there's 6 lanes on the road, if it's an urban, normal, multi-carriageway road, you can ride a bicycle there.
Yeah.
But you can't ride a PMD there. Why have they got that rule there? It's a nonsense.
Like so much of the road rules. Okay, so riding on a separated path. On a separated path, you can only ride on the side that is for bicycle riders. The other side is for pedestrians. And I love this because how wide are those paths? Sometimes they're like 90 centimetres or something. You just go, it's ridiculous. Yeah. A separated path sign will show you which side of the path you must ride on. You must always ride to the left of the bicycle and PMD rider come towards you.
Yes. Some of the paths in the city that are classified as separated paths have been done well, but there's a lot of them.
I think Brisbane City Council has done a really good job with a lot of them. If BCC can do it, I don't understand why, say, Moreton can't do it. I don't understand why that's not possible. My sense is that it's something that politicians want for that area, and then it happens. Yes. If the politicians aren't interested, it doesn't happen. Yeah. So riding in a bicycle lane on a road, you can choose to ride your PMD in some bicycle lanes, including bicycle lanes on roads with speed limits of 50 kilometres an hour, bicycle lanes that are physically separated from other lanes of traffic, for example, by bollards or a raised median strip, regardless of the speed of the road. You must not ride in a bicycle lane on the wrong side of the road, travelling towards oncoming traffic. You can choose whether or not to ride in a bicycle lane. Right.
The point I would make there again is I can't imagine a situation where you've got a road with a bicycle lane that hasn't got a centre line. There would always be a centre line in the road. You've got a bicycle lane which immediately discounts you become become an illegal operator or device rider and PMD rider in that situation.
Riding across a road at a crossing, you're allowed to stay on your PMD to cross a road at a designated crossing, but you must stop before riding across marked crossing, ride safely and slowly and give way to pedestrians, obey the speed limit of 12 kilometres an hour when on a crossing. You can ride your PMD diagonally across a scramble crossing. So that's where, for instance, in Brisbane, you just go across diagonally in those. You don't have to go on one and then to the other. You can actually do it all in one go. I think scramble crossings would be great to have more of. They're so safe. You feel really safe as a pedestrian. You must give way to vehicles and other road users at uncontrolled intersections before you ride across. Okay, riding at bicycle crossing lights. When riding along the road and facing a red traffic light, do not ride past the red traffic light unless a green bicycle crossing light is also facing you. When crossing the road at bicycle crossing lights, you must stop before entering a crossing if the light is red, only cross when the light is green. If the lights change to yellow or red while you are still in the crossing using the safest, most direct route, and obey the speed limit of 12 kilometres an hour when at the crossing. Now, the road rules technically say that if you are on the footpath at a T intersection and you have a red traffic light against you, you are supposed to stop at the red traffic light because it's a road-related area, which is nuts. Nobody does.
You'll never get a ticket for it.
I told the police officer about this thing and he goes, oh yeah, you are. So this is ludicrous. Yeah. Okay, riding to a bicycle storage area. A PMD rider may choose to enter a bicycle storage area from a bicycle lane that can be used by a PMD rider. So the bicycle storage area does not mean that you have bicycle storage like at the train station. What it means is that green box. Yeah, and they should just call it a green cycling box because that's just silly.
There was a lot of controversy in the national agenda. That word was decided upon, that phrase, a bicycle storage area, as opposed to anything else. And it was basically engineers on the day, because engineers always talk about areas for storage. Like if you have a lane where you're waiting to turn right, a right turn only lane or a left turn only lane, that's a storage area, and that's basically overrode everybody else and said no, they are bicycle storage areas because this is where they store when the lights are red. But it doesn't make any sense.
No, it's
not
just
for the ordinary people.
That's just ludicrous. When you enter a bicycle storage area, you must give way to anyone that is already in the bicycle storage area. Give way to any vehicle that is entering the area on a green or yellow traffic light. Read more about bicycle storage areas. No, thank you. I think I've had enough. Riding too close to a vehicle. I love this. You must keep at least 2 meters between you and the back of a vehicle when you follow the vehicle for over 200 meters. If you're in a vehicle, how slow is that car going to be going?
Well, here's the thing. If you are on any kind of a wheeled device and you get close enough to a vehicle, you're caught in the slipstream and you will basically pulled along at the same speed as that vehicle. And that's what this rule is about. You have to shake your head a bit and think, okay, you can do it for 200 metres. The moment you've gone 205 metres, you're breaking the law.
So, riding with care. When riding on roads and paths, you must ride with due care and attention. This includes being considerate of other riders, drivers and pedestrians around you. Some examples where a rider might not be riding with due care and attention including dangerously swerving in and out of pedestrians on a busy path, riding at an unsafe speed around a corner where pedestrians might be present. Make sure you are riding to the conditions and avoids unsafe moves that could put you or others at risk. Okay, being a traffic hazard. Let's just wrap this up. You must avoid being a traffic hazard. Do not ride into the path of a driver or a pedestrian. Hiring a PMD. If you are using a hired PMD, you must leave your device in a safe and responsible way, having regard for other path users. Hire companies may have additional conditions of use in addition to these rules. Hire companies must consult their local council or authority prior to deployment. Okay, we got to the end. Anything else you want to add? Any thoughts?
I think that's very comprehensive, but I think just to emphasise how ridiculous a lot of these rules are when all you do is just transpose the rules for one particular device or vehicle across to another one without giving reasonable amount of thought to what it is you're doing.
A lot of them are just ludicrous. They don't make any practical sense.
Yeah.
What's really clear is that the people who are deciding the road rules are not people who use devices.
No, on the whole that's probably the case. I don't know. There might be one or two PMD riders in the Department of Transport and Main Roads. Whether or not they will be specifically consulted as being a PMD user is a moot point.
When it goes out for legislation, how consultative are they to, say, Scootmasters or these groups?
Well, if there are groups that represent these specific groups of riders, and if they're properly recognised groups, then they would have an obligation to consult with them. But my guess is that there isn't. The only people they would probably consult with are the businesses that hire them. They would be interested in the legislation. But at the end of the day, when it comes to consultation, it's just ticking a box. Done this, spoken to these people, and now we do what we think is best.
Scootmasters, we had them on the show, and they said they actually have quite good, because it was Mark Bailey in those days. He's very cycle friendly. Then there was Bart Mellish, and now he's gone. We've got some guy up at Butterham.
Early days, yeah. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Anything else to add before we wrap up?
I don't think so. There's a lot more I think you could say, but I think we're at the end of our time.
Basically, they're very poorly written.
They are.
They're written by people who drive everywhere. This is what I found about using public transport and active transport. Everything is designed by people who drive, and so they have kind of no embodied experience about what it's like to be a user in that space. All right, I think we're done. Thanks for enjoying Streets and People, presented by Get Around Cabo Car Free. We publish our podcast regularly at the usual places and on our website, where you can find out more about us. getaroundcabocarfree.com.au. That's www.getaround, get around, that's pretty straightforward. Cabo, C-A-B-O, that's short for Caboolture. Car Free, C-A-R-F-R-E-E, there's no hyphen in that, .com.au. Our theme music is The Thief on AM Sound, which is just like our cars on our streets, always stealing the space. So let's stop that thief.